Is comic book accuracy in movies even real? Find out today on this episode of Unnecessary Opinions from a Middle-Aged White Dad. So I saw the brand new Superman movie, and I really liked it. And I was struck by a thought. This is the most comic book movie I've ever seen. And then I, did what everybody does. I went online to hear my thoughts echo back to me in a way that's more articulate than mine. And I was hearing counter arguments, like you do when you're on the internet, because that's what the internet is for. People saying, no, it's not the most comic book movie to ever comic book or whatever, even though that wasn't your point. They'll say The Dark Knight was the most comic book movie to ever comic book. And I thought to myself, well, that's funny, because there are no metahumans in Batman, and Batman famously has a lot of rogues in his gallery that are supernatural. Poison Ivy comes to mind. Clayface. Others. Like it had a Ra's al Ghul in it that didn't use Lazarus pits. I mean, he died. He did the one thing that Ra's al Ghul famously does not do. The thing that's interesting about comic books, is specifically the superhero genre, is they're constantly reinventing themselves. Every time a new artistic pair is in charge of Superman acts a little bit differently. Maybe he's a little bit funnier this time. Maybe he's a little bit grumpier that time. It all depends on who's at the wheel. For instance, you can look at Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy and say, this is the most Batman has ever Batmaned. And you can also look at Adam West's Batman and go, well, that also is the most Batman has ever Batmaned. And they could both be true. Either way, comic book accuracy, like faithful adaptations of superheroes, like what does that even mean and how can that be? Because when we are talking about these things, we are talking about two completely different ideas. Superman, to me, feels the most I've ever seen like single issue comics, the ones that come out monthly. Other comic book adaptation movies, such as, The Dark Knight, those feel like graphic novels. And in case you don't know the difference, comic books are more like television shows than they are like movies. They come out monthly, single issue, maybe 12 pages, and it's a continuous story that's been going on forever and forever. And most of the DC characters live in a shared universe, so they're all sort of interacting with each other. They often have crossover events where Superman and Batman will be hanging out for a bit. That's what James Gunn's Superman feels like. Now, the other thing, graphic novels, those are more like, hey, we want to explore a Batman story. Let's do Batman's first year, and it'll be, a self-contained story, and then it'll be over, and that'll be it. And that's what Christopher Nolan was doing. He wasn't creating an extended universe. He was creating a trilogy, a shorter story. So when I say Superman feels the most comic book movie that has ever comic book movie, is it feels like somebody has reset Superman's continuity and started over. Because the world feels lived in. It has other superheroes. Superheroes have been around for a while. It feels like crossover events are not only possible, but inevitable. In conclusion, if somebody comes up to you and says, this movie is the most comic book accurate movie I've ever seen, really what it means is nothing. Yeah, it means nothing. It doesn't mean anything because it can't really, you have to like follow it up with like something else, because otherwise you're just kind of saying words. I guess to put it another way, words have meaning, but they're also made up. So I guess like, follow, and subscribe. Is that where we're at? Is that what I'm doing next?